Hey everyone, welcome to Triangle Be Well. I'm your host, Howard Jacobson, FUD, PhD. And I'm joined in the studio, as always, by my esteemed producer, Amnon Nissan.
Good afternoon.
How are you,
I'm
Amnon?
fine. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for that raw broccoli you gave
I
me before I
I
came on the air.
I love what you brought with you.
What was that?
Nice weather.
Nice weather. Good, because we have our frisbee team won on Wednesday night, and we're playing in the semis tonight. So I hope the weather holds up, and if we win that one, then we're in the finals. So send good wishes, everyone, for the yellow team. So I'm also joined in the studio today by my friend Suzanne, quote quote, Zan Ballantyne. Hello, Zan.
Hi, Howard. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for asking me.
So happy to have you. This is like, I just wanted an excuse to kind of talk to you for an hour because every time that happens, I leave like feeling like calm and cool and upbeat. So you've got this sort of like meditator's aura around you.
Wow. Thanks, Howard.
Yeah. So
Maybe it's working.
what it doesn't work on you?
Well, I was going to say from the inside, maybe it's not working as well as it's working from the outside.
Uh-huh.
But people do say that to me, and it is good to know that the number of hours I've spent, which is not as many people, good to know that they're being put to some use.
Yeah, yeah. So, you can think of me as sort of like a psychic parasite. So as long as you stay calm when you're around me, then no harm done.
I'll do my best. I have to say, I do. Every time I listen to something by Pema Chodron, I get a big kick out of how much she emphasizes that even after whatever she's been meditating for 40, 50 years, that she still has a very busy mind. And I think, oh, that's so comforting because so do I.
Yeah. Right. Well, the idea, I guess the goal of like training a dog is not to turn it into a cat. It's just to make it a better
True
dog.
enough. True enough. And that is another really common analogy is to think of ourselves as puppies. We keep bringing ourselves back to the cushion, so we can, continue to practice.
Okay, cool. I'd like to think of myself as a puppy.
Yeah, well, I do too. Better than an old dog.
Yeah. I'm cute and fluffy.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to call and join our conversation today, the number is 919-518-9773. You can also reach us via Skype or Skippy at Computers 2K Voice. That's K as in the letter between the two letters it's surrounded by, J and L. Is that right? K-L. Yes. So Computers 2K Voice on Skippy, or you can call us up at 919-518-9773. If you're watching live on nissancommunications.com/live.php, you can always type in things in the comments box. So I wanted to talk to you about the health benefits and the psychological benefits and the plain old feel-good benefits of not running around with a crazy mind all the time. Like just being able to calm it down. So you're a meditation teacher, you're a yoga teacher, and you lead these retreats. And the last time we talked on the podcast, you had talked about the importance of like not putting people into boot camp type immersions, but helping people kind of gently move their way. So I want to talk to you about kind of all that stuff and all the whole variety of ways that we can get a little bliss, a little happiness, a little relaxation of the mind into our lives. And I'm hoping people will call in or write in or Skype in, and you can, kind of offer some guidance and advice for people where they are. Because that's what I love, is that you're very sensitive to where people are. And a lot of meditation practices are not. I remember my very first meditation that I went to was at the Zen Center, and I was sitting like as good as I could, but after 15 minutes, I was fidgeting a little bit, and I got dirty looks. Like I was making little bits of noise, and in fact, I even got some stern, like, facial gestures and hand gestures. No, we don't do that. And I understand that, like, Zen is sort of like a boot camp. And, like, it wasn't that they hated me or that they were surprised, but that was their way. And it worked so well, I never went back.
Okay, so that's interesting, Howard, because I, as Zan being my nickname, I often tell people that changing that E to an A makes a really big difference. As it does in any language, actually, when you make a small change to something, even the pronunciation. But more importantly, I've never been a very big fan of Zen myself because it felt punitive to
Mhm.
me. It felt very, very strict. And so I have come to understand that, like with any practice or religion or parent or teacher, there are some practices and disciplines that are more strict than others. And it just wasn't ever going to work for me. I knew that. So, in fact, when I did a year of teacher training to become a meditation teacher, in fact, I really disliked the work that we did about Zen for that very reason, because I felt like it just didn't make a lot of sense to me, which doesn't mean that it isn't a great practice, but I think we need to go looking for what our practice is and what makes us feel comfortable. And once we get to that point, then maybe we'll say, okay, I'm going to try a bit of Zen, see if I can live through that weekend.
Okay, great. So one thing I find when I talk to people about health and practices is that whenever they meet me, they assume I was always this way. Like if I have a pretty good grasp of diet or if I'm exercising, there's like, like so can you give us your story? Like, did you, pop out of the womb in lotus position?
Oh, goodness.
Like
No,
very,
I can't.
very
I
calm?
still can't do lotus positions. So. No, I would say quite the opposite. In fact, as I age, I become more introverted. But for some reason, I was drawn to the idea of the history and practice of Christian meditation when I was 19. So that was my foray into it.
Christian meditation. Now that's not common, right? I know a lot of sort of Christians who feel like meditation is sort of like the devil's playground.
Well,
right?
It's interesting because so this was in Montreal in I don't know what year because I can't do my math. Maybe 1981 and 1982, and I was working with a gentleman called Dom Father Lawrence Main, and he had come from England with another fellow, and whose name escapes me, but they were in a priory in Montreal, and they invited the public to come to do Vespers and meditation with them. And I had taken a course with Father Lawrence at the college that I was at in the history and practice of Christian meditation. And what I learned there is that the Christians, I think around, I don't want to, don't trust me on this, but I think around 1500s, meditation fell away from the Christian practice. And so Dom John Main, not Father Lawrence, Lawrence Freeman, I'm sorry, I got his name wrong. He was Lawrence Freeman, and his prior at the Benedictine Priory where he was living was John Main. And John Main was a Dominican priest, and he had actually gone to India to learn how to meditate because meditation had sort of fallen away from the Christian practice. So that's what I learned from them. But my own practice, when I moved back into meditation in my early 30s, was really more toward a Buddhist practice and Vipassana meditation, which has overlapped really nicely with the yoga. And that's what I practice now is Vipassana meditation and yogic, which I think of as movement meditation.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. So there's so many different types of meditation, different cultures. Look at me.
He's way more beautiful and fluffy.
Our producer's meditating.
I was thinking back to when I was growing up, and I was at the Y, and there was a Buddhist priest. I think I was 15, and we were talking one day, and he was saying, "Amnon-san, you don't sit in the bathroom reading. When you read, you read. You read. When you shit, you shit. You don't do both at the same time." And he was a Zen person.
It's like reminds me of.
That's what came to mind now when you.
Well, if he said that now, it's like you don't play Candy Crush on your phone while you shit, right?
When chopping wood, chop wood.
Yeah.
Like that.
All right. Well. Now I know at least some of the linguistic rules.
Oh, you can say whatever you want.
I can say whatever I want.
Yeah, I'm learning them too. Okay.
So, but there's all these different meditation styles and practices. Is there anything, let's say, universal? Like if you could, take all the particularities out of it. Like, what is meditation?
It's a tough question, and there are probably as many answers as there are people who sit and meditate. What it, to some degree, what it does for people and why they keep going back to it. I don't know. It's a bit of torture sometimes too. I think it's the stillness. I think it's bringing ourselves back to our natural state of being. And this is why the last pose in yoga, Shavasana, is corpse pose. It's also final resting pose. That's because that's exactly what we're practicing. And I think that's the place we're trying to get to, is to be able to find that natural state of existence where we are perfectly quiet and still. And it's very difficult for us as humans.
So when you call it our natural state, it sure don't feel natural. It feels like the most unnatural thing in the world. What makes you say it's natural?
Some of the Buddhist reading that I've done have suggested that this life is a dream. And so we come into this life, we're really sleeping in many ways. We all always talk about being awake and then falling back to sleep, being enlightened, being in the moment, and then not being in the moment. And so this dream that we live in is a bit of a sleep state. That this is what I understand it to be sometimes. This is the way I begin to interpret it. And I'm awake some of the time, and I'm asleep almost as often, if not more. I like to think that I'm becoming more awake, but I'm full of humility, because when I hear people like Pema Chodron say, hey, I still got monkey mind after being in this ashram, after running this, I can't remember the name of the place she calls in New Brunswick, after running this ashram where she lives for so long, she's still having trouble with stillness. But if you think about moments of stillness when you are in nature, and what often comes up for me is a frog waiting for a fly. They just sit perfectly still until the fly gets close enough. And that's how they snag their fly. I think of that as our natural state of being, that we are pieces of nature. And our cells are a little bit different than plant pieces of nature. We can move around and we can be more animated. But ultimately, we're really connected to the universe in the same way, and we need the soil, and we need the light, and we need the water to function and to grow and to be nourished and to be healthy. And we breathe. We breathe this air that connects all of us to everything.
Okay. So right now, you and I are in what I would describe as a fairly unnatural environment compared to the frog on the log, right? So we're in a room with no windows, right? It's a climate controlled, light controlled studio. We are surrounded by tons of electronics. Do you think it's possible to be meditative in such a space, or do we need?
Oh, absolutely.
Do we need the
Absolutely.
ripples of the pond? And
Yeah, no, part of the reason that we practice meditation is so that we can find the space within. Yeah, so often people will say, especially here in Raleigh, when I started going to yoga here in Raleigh, maybe 17 years ago in Raleigh, we would often talk about how in New York you would have, just walls of people in the studio, and the streets would be humming, and people would still get quiet and find their space within their practice and be able to sit in meditation afterwards. So the meditation is not, as you say, because we're in the woods and have this opportunity to be still, but it is an opportunity for us to practice finding that stillness regardless of the situation we find ourselves in.
you talked about being asleep a lot and trying to be awake more and more. Someone who's new to this, who's not sort of in the world and doesn't exactly know what you're talking about, how can we tell if and when we're asleep? Because I think I'm awake. I can pinch myself and hurt, and I can't fly, or like it has all the characteristics that I associated with with being awake. So how does somebody know when they're not really awake in the sense you mean?
Okay, so as soon as you bring your attention to how you're feeling and what you're thinking, and I sometimes describe it as backing up a little bit from your own thoughts and what you're thinking about. If you can bring those thoughts out into the palm of your hand, perhaps, and see the thoughts as separate from you, you wake up into this observer role of the world about us. And we're all in this world. Everybody's in it. Maybe they're not in the meditation world, Maybe they'll be interested at some point, maybe never. That's okay too. But for those of us who have found the meditation world and are intrigued and drawn in by it, what we notice is that we can be in this observer place and we're not who we really are. So we begin to see a distinction between the ego of the person that's Suzanne Ballantyne, that calls herself a health and wellness coach and teaches yoga, and identifies herself as a mother, teacher, friend, woman, whatever. And then this other bigger space that exists around us, sort of where the breath comes from, which is what I often say, the breath comes in and touches us in our most intimate spaces, and it also connects us to the entire universe. And for most humans, that is too overwhelming a thought. But I think we can come back to our own thoughts that we're having, listen to the voices in our head that are telling us, I'm going to be late, no, or what else do I have to do today? What did I take out for dinner? All those thoughts, if we stop and become still, we recognize that we are the observer of that person as well as that person.
Mm. And so being asleep is thinking you're just that person?
Is forgetting that there's more to you than your ego. Yeah. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions?
I'm not. What do you think?
Do you need anything clarified?
I don't know. I'm many times I'm thinking that maybe this is the dream, and when we're dreaming, it's the real life. How do we know it's not? Just because we were told that.
You mean when we go to sleep at night?
Yeah. I mean, we are told that we're going to sleep. Mm-hmm. But maybe it's not. Maybe we're just going back to normal.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, my preference would be if I had to vote on reality, my preference would be that the real thing is the place where I have the most agency, where I have the most choice.
Okay. And where do you have that, Howard?
Well, when
is it okay if I start asking the question?
Please.
Where do you have that?
I have the most choice when I'm the most aware of my choices. So I was thinking. I was saying to Amnon before you got here that my GPS froze today. I've never seen that before. Like not the computers and phones freeze all the time. And but my GPS, the thing that my friend that I suction cup to the windshield, all of a sudden I've been going for like a mile and a half, and it still tells me. It actually says I'm going 7.1 miles an hour, and I have 1.8 miles till my turn, and nothing's changing.
Uh-huh.
So like at that point, I woke up. Because when if you remember life before GPS, you actually had to know your way around.
Yes, exactly. You had to use a map.
I use GPS exclusively since I moved here 11 years ago, and I can't find one thing from another. So the GPS was allowing me to stay asleep because it was kind of this external guidance. And all of a sudden I had to think, okay, I got to get off at 4:40, and then what's the exit? It's 1C. It's this is and so at that point, like had the GPS, I heard this story on the radio about a woman a couple weeks ago who drove her car into a lake in the fog because the GPS told her it was right. So that's kind of the metaphor. Like when I'm awake, I can make my own decision about whether to drive into the lake or not.
And I often say about the GPS and our phones that we put our brains in here. So if we need brain surgery, we'll just be able to mail them in, because so much of the information that we used to keep in our heads is now in our devices. So I said, well, that'd be great. We just stay home. We don't need house calls. Yeah. Send my phone back when you've upgraded my brain.
I mean, when you talk meditation.
Yes.
I mean,
to get back to that
it happened
topic.
To each and every one of us. You drive.
Yes.
And you're suddenly there.
Yes.
And you said, what happened here? I mean, because you were thinking about something, you're not paying attention, but yet you avoided every car on the way, you did not hit anybody, and you arrived where you're supposed to arrive.
So that's a good point, Amnon, because what we're talking about is the difference between unconsciously moving through life and consciously moving through life. And when we're sleeping, we're unconsciously moving through life. And when we wake up and realize, oh, shoot, I was just paying attention to the GPS, that's waking up. That's coming into the moment and become really aware of where you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, a lot of people come to me because they want longevity, right? And so, the question for me is like, what do you want longevity for? If you spend your entire life driving from place to place and not remembering it, like
what would be the point?
what's the benefit of that? Like if you got this gift of life, you might as well like be there for it.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a conversation at a networking meeting that I was at last week about awe and how we've just overrun this word awesome. It's awesome. Everything's awesome. Everything's awesome. And we say it so much. But how often do we really recognize how awesome we are as human beings with hearts that beat constantly? We're not plugged in. Everything functions. It knows how to do it. We can't even see in there to know how it's managing to work with the nutrients or the crap that we feed ourselves. It all functions without us really having to do very much. I think this lends itself to our being able to do so much unconsciously. But when we move to consciousness, then we're awake. And so that's the difference. We can drive our cars and say, oh, shoot, I'm not going this way today. Why am I on this exit? And realize that we're just out of habit. So habit is probably unconscious, and changing it requires another level of consciousness, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's the Einstein quote. You can't solve a problem with the same level of consciousness with which you created it.
Gotcha. So one of the things I notice is that when I work with people, telling them what to do for their health is pretty straightforward and simple. But then getting them to do it, that's where the problem arises.
Yeah.
And I feel this certainly in myself, and I see it in people around me, that when I'm unconscious, or that I engage in bad habits because I don't want to touch my consciousness. I don't want to touch the parts of my mind that I would rather not think about.
Because you don't want to know about it.
I don't want to know about it.
Yeah.
So like when I'm almost talking about driving.
I know all about that, not wanting to know about it.
Like when you drive, I almost said you can drive and you get there, even though you're totally, you don't have no recollection of the drive, you don't hit anybody. But in my experience, when you're going through life that way,
Yes.
You're not hitting people physically, but you sure are doing a lot of damage
probably.
with your elbows and knees and feet
Probably.
Emotionally.
Yeah,
right?
but to a great degree, Howard, we're human. So we're not going to be able to take all of that out of our lives. It's the, I don't want to call it a burden because that sounds so negative. It's just the nature of being human. It's part of being human, yeah. But this traveling with a bit more consciousness allows us to be in that place where we recognize what our choices are. And, often when I'm working with people and they say to me, yeah, but, I needed a reward, and the chocolate cake was the reward, And okay, maybe a sliver of chocolate cake's a nice reward. Half the cake's not a reward. And if you really think about it, if you were conscious and you said, is this a reward, or am I actually undoing the whole week of mindfully not eating sugar and sticking to the vegetables and going for my exercise every day? So in that place where you have that a little bit extra choice as you talk about it, you can say, okay, what do I want to reward myself with? Not, I'm having that cake, which, I had the cake Saturday night, I have to admit, at a birthday party. But no, not half of it. No, but, in a restaurant, you always get more than you need. So I shared it with people, though, so that was helpful. But it is important to become a little bit more conscious and recognize, okay, am I really rewarding myself in this situation? Or am I actually undoing some of what I've done? So that's part of waking up, is having those choices for yourself.
Right. And for people who are questioning the whole meditation thing, because they have no concept of what you're talking about an observer from that spiritual place, the thing that I come back to is meditation is teaching me to delay gratification and to deal with unpleasantness and discomfort in a very iterative, repetitive, no excuses kind of way. So that when I eat crap, and I do it less and less these days, but when I eat crap, I almost never make a conscious decision to eat the crap, right? I find myself eating I find myself having bought it, having opened it.
Right.
And, like eating having birthday cake at a birthday party and having a small amount could be a very conscious act, but eating half the cake is not a conscious act.
Right, but as you said, through your practice, okay, so meditation is a practice, so is yoga. Everything we do is a practice if you think about it. And it's Barbara Kingsolver that brought that idea to me, so I always give her credit in a collection of essays. Everything we do is a practice, and practice has that curve that just continually gets better. It kind of flattens off, but if we keep practicing, we get better and better at it. Mm-hmm. So the way we eat, the way we get ready to go to sleep at night, how often we meditate, whether we practice running or yoga or tennis, or the more we practice, the better we're going to get at it. So what's interesting is, yes, okay, so we fall asleep in the moment because we get caught up in the energy of the birthday party and say yes to the cake. But ultimately, your practice has led you to choose the cake far less often. Mm-hmm. And that's the benefit of the practice. Not that we're going to be perfect. So this is a quote on my website. Practice doesn't make perfect, but it makes well. It allows us to develop enough consciousness and practice to be a little bit more mindful about the way we're living our lives.
Mm-hmm. And I find that for myself that what the meditation does is it brings my moment of consciousness closer and closer to the beginning of the chain of events where I have more control over it. So it's like, at the beginning when the stream is just sort of a trickle out of a well, out of the spring, it's very easy to move it. But once it reaches, it's the delta about to enter the ocean, there's not a lot of engineering I can do to change its course, so that if I discover, okay, now, I'm catching myself eating it. Okay, maybe next time I can catch myself opening it, or catch myself reaching for it, or catch myself thinking about it, or catch myself buying it.
Sure, or just saying, does anybody else want some of this? Like sharing immediately reduces the amount that you're going to consume. Or thinking, oh gosh, this is good. I could have more of it later if I put it away now, depending on what it is. But yeah, I think, and what else the other thing that you're talking about is, so mindfulness would allow us to slow down, to pay attention to the nature of a thought. And I'm not that much of a master to be this good at it, but have you read the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying?
No.
Sogal Rinpoche?
No, but I have listened to the Grateful Dead. If that's equivalent.
Actually, I think those dead guys were pretty into this.
I'll give you some good quotes later.
I'm not sure. Yeah, okay, good. I'm not sure how they arrived at their state. But I've also heard them say in India that they've used cannabis to help people arrive at different levels of consciousness. That they don't promote it as a frequency thing to do, but it has allowed people to open up their mind a little bit more to be in that state. Since you brought the Grateful Dead in, I brought the cannabis into the conversation.
Today's Triangle Blue Well has been brought to you by the Colorado Department of Tourism.
Are you contacting them? So where were we now? We got to go back past the cannabis, past the Grateful Dead.
You asked me about the Tibetan book.
The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying.
See how monkey mind works?
In that book, Sogal Rinpoche says that there are 17 moments to a thought. And I'm still wrestling with that because that's really slowing down to the speed of nature, to that state of and that's part of why I think maybe it is supposed to be our natural state of well-being. Because if people could just practice enough to get there, to recognize what happens when we have a thought, and then to be able to identify the stages of perception, I think that's just phenomenal.
Can you give us an example of like 2 or 3 of the 17?
Well, you just did, which I thought was really interesting. So you catch yourself a little bit sooner when you got the treat in front of you, right? So that's the beginning of realizing that you're heading down the path of, I'm going to eat that cake. Okay. So what happens is there's a thought that comes in. I still don't notice them coming in, but I'm working on it. And then we respond to that as human beings in 3 ways, says the Buddha, or says the literature. To my understanding, I'm not a master. We have aversion to it. There's pleasure, and we really want more of it. Or we are just neutral. It has really no effect to us. And that's the beginning of the perception coming in.
Okay.
And this is a practice, a meditation practice, is to play with the thoughts that come up. So most of you should know that meditation just doesn't disappear. Your thoughts don't disappear in meditation. There are times when you can find that space that I refer to it as. I call it yoga space, or just observation of the breath, where there don't seem to be as many perceptions coming through. You might hear things, so you're going to perceive the noise of the traffic in the street. You may hear someone in your house. You may have a sensation of a breeze coming from the air conditioning or something. These are all perceptions, but the thought perception, the 17 moments to the thought, start with that, okay, I'm having a thought. Do I like this thought? Do I not like this thought? And where do you go with the story after that? Oh, I want to really keep thinking about this. But thoughts, both good and bad, can take us down the, oh, I got to think about this. I can't believe she said that to me. I'm going over, oh my gosh, what will I say to her now? Should I write back? Should I wait 2 days? How much space do I need to put between that comment and what I have to say? But, we go with it, right?
So we create a whole world in our mind.
We create a whole story in our mind.
A whole dream world based on that thought.
It's unbelievable what we create. And it's all in here. It has nothing to do with her. She just made one comment. Everything after that comment is us inventing where that came from and what it's about.
Those 17 minutes can be a big problem unless everybody's having them at the same time. Because if you're in front of your boss and you're talking to him, or he's asking you a question, and then you go into it, guess what's going to happen?
Okay,
to
but
you?
17 moments are different than 17 minutes.
Moments,
so it
okay,
doesn't take minutes.
right.
It just takes fractions of a second for those pieces of a thought to take, because our brains are fast.
Yeah, that's true, though.
We
You're
just
right.
whip through the thoughts. We don't even notice that we went down the, I'm eating the cake, until we're like, oh, I wasn't going to have any cake.
Right. But I think what you're saying is, like, this is not a good time when your boss is coming to you with something, very urgent to say.
No, it's not. But that's why we practice.
That's
No,
why we
but if he went into it at the same time,
well, that would
everything
be
would be perfect.
Yeah.
That would be ideal. I think there are many people out there trying to develop those leaders, in fact.
Yeah. So,
I think that's on the leadership agenda these days.
So I'm curious why, if they're talking about the 17 moments of a thought, why is it called the Tibetan Book of the Living and the Dead, and not the Tibetan Book of Don't Eat the Chocolate?
Well, because
it seems pretty grand.
Yeah. So now it's been a while since I read the book. Now we're going to get into me waiting and maybe getting into trouble. So I'm not going to say a lot more about it, but I will say that Amnon brought us a little bit toward that. Is that there are different states of consciousness. So being asleep is actually another state of consciousness. And we all are better and worse at it. Do you dream? Do you remember all your dreams?
Some of them.
Some of them, exactly. Me too. But, as soon as we get up and start to walk to go to the bathroom or to get dressed in the morning, that cross-brain activity knocks the memory of the dream right out. So anybody who tells you to remember your dreams says, no, you just write it down next to your bed, don't move. Because it fades away really quickly, right? So he's talking about, being asleep, and then something called the bardos, which is the stages of consciousness after we pass away. And this is really deep stuff. This isn't come to my mini yoga retreat and practice being in silence for a couple of hours. This is, hey, you're on retreat for 30 days, maybe a year in silence, and you're spending so much time with the mind, exercising it and getting to know it, that you're able to move into other states. And I don't know about that. That's probably why I practice at my own level.
There is worse than that. If you're talking about sleeping, is another state of in your dreams. How many times do you remember what happens in the day before? Never. Yeah. So you completely, when you go to sleep, I mean, it just wipes everything that you did all day, because you don't remember anything. It's suddenly a completely different world.
Well, sometimes it shows up in your dreams, don't you find?
Some things will show
Yeah,
up, but
I mean,
it's not like you remember,
mixes up.
I need to get up and
Oh,
and
yeah,
do
yeah,
something.
yeah.
It's,
No, I know. Even though you're falling asleep and you think, I'll remember in the morning, I gotta,
yeah.
I know, we do forget a lot, but
no.
that's part of being human too. We can't make meditation do everything for us.
Right. So I'm curious if there's anybody waiting on the line wants to jump in. No.
Number.
The number to call, all right, is 319 coffee mug 3. Oh, there we go. 919-518-9773 or
Okay.
computers 2K voice on Skype.
Sorry about that. Do you want it down? Oh, yeah.
Oh,
In
No,
front.
you just don't want to show.
Oh, I
Nick,
see. All
yeah.
the time. Yeah, okay.
okay, now I've outed
But I
your
am drinking
now
green,
I've-
decaf green tea in case
I've
anybody
outed your
wants to
coffee
know.
mug.
Yeah,
we
no.
have to pretend
No, I'm
we're
finished
at
with
a
coffee for the
completely
day.
different level here. So let's talk.
Okay.
So let me bring it back to kind of
Bring it back.
brass tacks for a little bit. What if someone's listening to this and they've never meditated and they don't know about the Bardos and they don't have a particular experience? Like, what are some symptoms of modern life that could be made better by becoming more mindful, by meditating, by yoga, by adopting a conscious slow down and smell the roses practice?
Right. So I think we already talked about one of these too, reaction time. I used to refer to my family at home, especially when the kids were young, as the overreaction family. Did you ever see that Saturday Night Live about the eggshell family? So the eggshell family was very sensitive. And so I adopted this name for our family, which is the overreaction family. So I would think, okay, it's not the end of the world. Just relax, take a breath. It's something fell on the floor, or, she took your toy, but there are 2 of them. Hang on. So I think that it really helps you with reaction time. Because the more time you spend at a slow pace, the less you'll feel like you need to be in a hurry all the time. And the opposite is true. And we all have seen it. There are people in the world who kind of hover on this earth at a really quick pace. They're in a hurry all the time. I think it's called ADHD. And we say that about the body, and we say it about the mind too. There's I don't know the name of the company, but there's a group of doctors in the area working with kids who have ADD and ADHD, and they call it fast brain. We are constantly distracted because we have so many different things to think about on a regular basis. And that is really difficult for us. I'm sure that in many ways, what I always say is the universe is laughing at us. First of all, we have sitting disease, which is the new smoking, and I find it quite interesting that the longer we sit, the more we create these people with ADD and ADHD. As if I can't sit here any longer. I don't. Yeah, let's all get up for a
Yeah.
I
minute.
don't want to create.
I don't want to.
I do fidget a lot this show.
Yeah, go for it. Fidget. I mean, that's okay. I think it's okay to fidget while you're meditating too, to be honest. I mean, responding to, I know that's not Zen of me at all, but responding to what your body needs actually makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I was
From a health and wellness perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I was taught, well, the body is trying, it's your mind trying to talk you out of it. It's the ego trying to save itself because it knows once you get to a certain level it dies. But I get these terrible itches on my nose, and my right lower back starts aching. You saying it's okay to pay attention to that?
I am, because you know what? I think it's more important to practice meditation and sit in stillness and respond to those things than it is not to meditate. And what happens is those things will happen to you less and less, because I don't notice those as much as I used to. Now, I do on days when I'm a little bit more fidgety, but like balance poses in yoga, I always say balance is dynamic. Some days we have more of it than others. Some day you feel more of what my teacher called the sacred tremor in a balance pose than you do other days. And that just could be how well you slept, or what you ate, or what's going on in the rest of your life, So I think what's important is to come to meditation with an open mind and to invite yourself to let go. Most people who come to the silent mini retreat for 3 hours, they say, wow, that was a big relief to not have to generate thoughts and ideas and stories and what's going to happen next, to just let you lead the yoga and the guided meditation and then allow us to be in silence was actually a big relief for them. Where else do you get that?
You mentioned distraction as one of the major ways that we can know that we're in need of a hit. And and when I was in the business world, like, distraction was the enemy of everything, because everybody especially entrepreneurs, people who had to make it happen or it wasn't going to happen, like the things that we care about are the very things that we distract ourselves from because they're hard and because they're meaningful and because our identities are wrapped up in it.
Right.
And so, for me, for many, many years, and still, like I had this constant battle with distraction.
Yeah. So ironically, the battle with distraction keeps the distraction alive, because anything that we fight with, Wayne Dyer says this, whatever, I don't know if he said it first, but that's where I heard it. Whatever you resist will persist. You're just strengthening it. So, I had this with my teenage son. He asked me if he could watch this later. Maybe not now. When he was a teenager, I knew that when, he was the best at getting me to fight with him because we were so invested in it. And it took a lot of practice, and we're still playing the game, but he's practicing with me now, which is kind of fun. If I let it go, there's nothing, there's nothing for him to fight with. And so it would completely change. And the same thing will happen with distraction, I have found. That the more we get uptight about, oh, shoot, I just got distracted again, or, oh, I always do that, oh, I'm going to be late. The more we have a negative reaction with the way that we are in the world, that actually strengthens the I don't know the language. It actually strengthens that neural pathway. When we couple something with something pleasant, it strengthens it also. But have you ever read Buddha's Mind? Or Buddha's Brain, I think it's called?
No.
He says in that book, and I'll think of his name while we're talking, because I'm not good at this, coming up with the names, that there are actually 7 negative brain farts, I'll call them. Sorry. For every 1 positive. There are 7 negative neural, what do you call them?
Brain fart.
Yeah, perfect. There are 7 of those for every positive one.
Okay.
And in retraining our brains around things that we do that we don't like about ourselves or they're negative for us, we actually have to almost like rephrase it 7 times for every 1 time we hear ourselves say, I'm so bad at that. We got to stop and go, oh, no, actually, I'm getting better at that. I'm actually getting pretty good at that. I think I'm going to be better at remembering names from now on. There's my thing that I need to bring into this. I think that's a really important thing for us to realize, that the animal brain comes from fight or flight, being threatened all the time, not knowing if we were going to get enough to eat on a regular day, not knowing if we were going to get attacked in the dark. That's amazing that you told me about your meditation teacher. I don't think we were on, that does the dark meditations in the dark.
Yeah.
Which one of us hasn't had more of our scariness and fear show up for us at night? I've talked to other mothers who tell me this, when you first have children or when you're going on a family trip, like you get into bed, you turn the lights out, and every possible not having the tickets, didn't pack the right things for the children, comes up in the dark. You get up in the morning, you're like, I can't wait to go on the trip. I don't know what I was so worried about. So it's really important for us to realize that our natural animal brain is a lot of us are tweaked towards negativity.
Well, it's as you say, it's a survival thing.
Yeah.
Right. Positivity may enhance our survival a little bit, but not as much as paying attention to the negative will enhance our survival a lot.
Exactly. But now that we live in this world, and there's so much positive psychology going on out there, and we don't need to worry for the most part here in the Western world, we're practicing being present in a more positive way. And so the more we develop this capacity for meditation and awareness, it changes. So to go back over, it changes our reaction time. So we don't react to things as gravely as we may have in the past, which doesn't mean we don't get caught sometimes. We're halfway into the cake before we recognize it. But it also reduces the chance that we can get caught up in these things that we don't like about ourselves, because we build an awareness around it, and you start to laugh at yourself. Like I used to practice a lot in traffic. I would keep the radio turned off, and I would drive in silence because I got tired of the radio, and I'm really tired of the news, because when I listen to the news, I'm in that negative space all the time. Oh my gosh. And when I'm not listening to the news, I am having a much more pleasant life, because frankly, I'm acting locally. I'm thinking globally. And a lot of teachers will tell us, if we sit and hold the stillness, we're actually holding the stillness for other people. It's like if something's constantly wavering, and we just hold it for a sec, we bring it back to center. A pendulum, water that's moving in a pot that you're carrying, you put it down, you give it stillness, the water will settle. So this is a lot of what we're doing, is we're trying to settle that stuff within ourselves, our own
and the
constant wave.
The news is just the aggregation of everybody's
Stuff.
shaking water pots.
Exactly, because it's kind of like this collective conscious that we're all dealing with. So what I wanted to say, though, is so I would start practicing in the car. I would turn the radio off, and I'd be driving along, and I'd think, this is good. And then someone would inevitably get in front of me or, cause a problem for me. And I would think, oh, my gosh, I just called that guy an asshole under my breath. And then I would laugh my head off that, oh, yeah, your reaction time's you're much better at not reacting. But you know what? We have to get to that place where we can laugh at ourselves before we can undo the knots of neural transmission in our heads. And a lot of that is automatic because it's so habitual. But when we begin to practice changing those habits by teasing out the knots in our habits, it's a much easier thing to do if it's pleasant and you feel good about yourself than if you're talking down to yourself or being derogatory with yourself on a regular basis.
I want to come back to one thing you said, which was about, not fighting the distraction. Just to be clear, you're not talking about giving up and giving in, right? Because I'm thinking about, I'm not going to enjoy this. There's in the big book of Jewish humor, there's a sort of satirical Hasidic tales, the European, the very devout Jews, and it had this Rabbi so-and-so used to confuse the evil urge by giving in without a fight.
So,
you're not talking about giving in without a fight, right?
I'm talking about not worrying about distraction in meditation, because the meditation will then be full of your focus on whether or not you're being distracted, which kind of defeats the purpose of coming to stillness and just noticing what comes up. So if an itch comes up and you all of a sudden your meditation is about whether or not you're going to reach for your nose, then you're not really at peace anymore. You're in this agitated place. So just go ahead and scratch your nose and put your hands back down on your lap and practice this less agitated reaction time that you want in the rest of your life. That's what that's why we're on the cushion, so we can practice. The thoughts are going to provide themselves, and we're going to practice with what comes up.
So in other words, the thoughts are actually the point.
A lot of the time,
If we could
in the beginning,
if we could switch it off, we wouldn't learn anything because we can't switch off life.
Exactly.
Right. So the thought is like your boss yelling at you, or the alleged asshole cutting you off in traffic,
or what you're going to have for dinner, or
so we need those thoughts.
We need those thoughts because that's what we're practicing with. Yes, but over time, once we've sat with them, we realize they're here they come again. Oh yeah, I've been here so many times. A lot of people use the cloud imagery, right? The clouds going through the sky. Each thought represents a cloud. You practice not getting attached to it. You see the thought and you say, oh yes, I will have to think about dinner later, and you let it go. So it's not that the distractions aren't coming, it's that you begin to react to them less and less, because resisting them and will get you stuck in the itch. You can't even move on to the next thought because you're still worried about whether or not it's okay for you to scratch during meditation.
Right. But then what can happen to me is, so I'll get caught up in the itch, and then I'll remember that I shouldn't get caught up in the itch, so I'll beat myself up for getting caught up in the itch, and then I'll be disappointed in myself for beating myself up, and then I'll be profoundly angry at myself for being disappointed for being...
Okay, so now we go into an open heart meditation, and you want to be kind. How do you want to respond to someone? Think of this is what I love, inner child. Hasn't gone anywhere. He was born. He's still here. He just grew up, filled out, studied a lot, got a PhD or a FUD.
Yeah.
And how do you want to be with someone who who's struggling with that?
Oh, it's okay.
And that's where we find this is where the loving compassion, loving kindness, and self-compassion comes from the practice. Is that we then learn to be in that space with ourselves. And even, the loving kindness meditation that Sharon Salzberg is to start with yourself and to move out to your family and your loved ones and to keep moving out into your extended family and your neighborhood and eventually get to the people that drive you around the bend. And offer them loving kindness as well, even though, you hate their tone of voice or whatever problem you have, issue. who they're voting for, whatever.
Yeah.
You offer them loving kindness too, because in the big picture, there are no sides, right? It's just a big world, and the sides come from us getting attached to something about the way it is that we think or what we believe.
Doesn't that take all the wind out of activism?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. Actually, I was listening to Adi Ashanti not too long ago, and he said that he got involved with a group when he was at university, a group who were promoting peace. And he found it kind of ironic that they were so angry during one of their discussions about the other side. And then he just brought that up, right? That is exactly what we're learning to do, is to recognize that there's yin and yang, there's day and night, there's my side and your side. But in actual fact, I'm just as stubbornly, humanly attached to what I believe as you are to what you believe. And
yeah, but the difference is I'm right.
Yes, you are right if you say so, for you. And all you need to do is be okay with that, but not try to impose it.
So I have a little problem with that.
Yeah, I know.
Not just
That's
as someone who doesn't meditate, but even
Yeah.
To me, there's elements within the spiritual
Yeah.
community that are denying sometimes the need for oppositional.
You can't bring, what do they say? You can't make the horse drink. You can bring it to the water, but it's not going to drink. So you can put the ideas out there, and they're ideas that you and I might be interested. Some overlap, some don't. But the only way to find peace, really, I read this recently too, and I found it fascinating, is that the first act of war is defense.
Mm.
And I thought, whoa, I think we have that combined. We all think it's offense, right? Yeah, would be common knowledge and nature about it.
Yeah, look what
And
we did in Iraq.
It's not. It's the arm block. It's the fighting.
Mm.
So if I don't do that, then there's no resistance. There's no strength that can be built. If you don't have a weight, you can't build muscle. So I think what we're learning through meditation is to find peace and well-being with who we are and what we believe. And the minute that we can let go of whether or not other people believe the way we do, the more at peace we'll be.
If the other side doesn't practice the same,
Yeah.
then they're going to
Yeah, I am
come
not in
and
the
they're going
discussion
to
again. Yeah.
trample on us while we are meditating. Because they look at those dummies.
Yeah, but if this is a
So it
dream
has to
and
be-
it's not the last stop, and meditation is teaching us how, none of us knows whether it'll be a car accident or a heart attack
Yeah.
or lie down and stop eating at 105,
Yeah.
So what we're practicing is finding a default. I just wrote about this on LinkedIn, actually. What we're practicing is finding the default system, which is wholeheartedly loving ourselves regardless of the situation. And so that means this is a really ugly situation, but I can't change an attacker or a car accident or maybe a freak genetic thing that causes a problem. Or, last year I fell and broke my shoulder. But I can change the way I react to it. And so if it's my turn today in this accident or dying from this disease, that is one of the beautiful things about yoga and meditation, is that it teaches us to find peace and well-being with ourselves. Whether we're scratching our nose, arguing within ourselves over, something that happened in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's just finding peace and well-being, and that's my
Yeah, and I guess
that's my go-to.
Yeah, I guess that's where I think we're a little bit apart. Is that for me the most important thing that I'm getting out of meditation is not necessarily peace all the time, but freedom of choice. So that I can go into, I do a Russian martial art, and my teacher Glenn Murphy often talks about, like, the purpose of this martial art is to teach you to remain human no matter what. Like, it's a martial art.
Right.
There may be violence.
Yes.
But to do it,
Exactly.
if it's going to happen
So-
from a place of
Right.
choice.
I think we're saying the same thing.
We might be saying the
I
same
have
thing.
the choice to be peaceful, even though it might be a less than desirable, last 20 minutes on Earth when my number comes up. That's
Right. Well, I don't think we're saying exactly the same thing,
Well-
because I might choose
To fight.
But I think you can fight peacefully. I think you can fight without
Well,
hatred.
I was just going to say, but you, in that moment, while you're running through those thoughts, you'll decide whether or not you're making that choice based on defense, integrity, any number of values or ethics that you hold true to yourself. But you have the choice.
Yeah. Is this person threatening my life and my family and my values, or my ego?
Yeah. And are you at peace with the choice you're making to fight back or to not fight back?
I think we're in the same place. So before you mentioned LinkedIn, which brought me to the whole concept of let's tell people where they can find you and what you do.
Oh, yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind.
So I'm at simplypractice.net, www.simplypractice.net.
So I feel like for a meditation teacher, you should say it a little bit more slowly.
www.simplypractice.net. I actually rarely hold my hands like this when I'm meditating. But thank you for that, Howard. I'm on LinkedIn, Suzanne Ballantyne, and I teach on contract. So if you're interested in bringing yoga to a local organization in RTP or somewhere around Raleigh, I'd be happy to come and teach some yoga. I currently teach at SAS Institute in Cary, and I am just moving my classes from a home studio to downtown Cary to Smiling Circle Yoga.
Oh, wow.
I'm very excited. I'm starting a lunchtime yoga.
And tell us a little bit about the retreats.
Okay, and so the retreats are 2, 3, 4, we're sort of up to 4 times a year. This is our 4th year offering them. And they are 3 and 4 hour silent yoga mini retreats. You start out with a yoga class, followed by a restorative yoga class. And so the design is to bring people more and more deeply into themselves, into the silence and into the restorative place after the active yoga. And then for the last hour, we come back out, guided meditation, and finally we journal, or we bring, those mandala coloring books for adults with lots of pens and crayons and pencils. And we offer a choice of activity, a conscious choice to do what you want with your last 20 to 30 minutes of your retreat. And sometimes we offer lunch. And if we do offer lunch, it's vegetarian with gluten-free options. And we eat lunch in silence, which a lot of people have told me has really added to it. They didn't think they'd be able to get through the lunch part. And so it's funny how there's a sense of accomplishment in being still and in being silent, which is really one of our natural states. Like, we're good at it when we're asleep, but we resist it a bit when we're awake. I know, because I resist it too.
My wife would disagree with you about how good I am at it when I'm asleep.
Oh, you're not good at sleeping.
Not stillly, apparently.
Oh.
As Willie Nelson the Bard says, I can be moving or I can be still, but still moving to me.
Well, and the first time I went on retreat, they would ask us to do a walking meditation, which I wasn't as familiar with, and I practiced a few times, and I thought, this walking business is for the birds. I grew up as a teen running 5Ks and 10Ks, and so I was just not into this very slow movement. I get it now and I do it. All I wanted to do was walk down the country road, and I went to the teacher and said, when you say walking meditation, I want to hightail it out of here for a run. And he said, well, go for it. So, it's the forgiveness of the teacher that allows you to just be who you are and keep moving toward acceptance, radical acceptance. Who's the woman who wrote that? You know who I mean? Tara Brach.
Uh-huh.
Great little book on learning to accept ourselves and falling more and more in love with ourselves and who we are, whether we're chatty or, unconscious or conscious. Or if you want to get to know yourself and begin to love yourself more, it's a great way to do it.
Wow, that was out of nowhere. All right.
So other than that, I do have a Simply Practice Facebook page also. It's Simply Practice Raleigh, in case anybody wants to go find me there as well.
Great. So I guess that's the takeaway, is if you have been watching or listening and you've flirted with meditation and you just hit a kind of procedural wall, either with the book you're reading or the CDs or the audios you're listening to or the teacher, and you're just not feeling like you have a step in, that you're somehow a screw up or the thing isn't working for you, Zan here is the person whom I've discovered who will take you the next step and make you feel good about where you've come from and what you're doing, and will allow you to go deeper without judgment through her practice of radical acceptance and her many years experience in helping people enter this wonderful world. So Zan, thank you so much for taking the time
Thank
today.
you, Howard.
Thank you.
And Amnon, thank you very much.
Thank you, Amnon, for all the sound effects and the interesting questions and stories and contributions. And I want to thank everyone who's watching. If you want to know more about what I do, I help people get well and stay well. And you can find me at trianglebewell.com and tribewell.us. You can also check out the Plant Yourself podcast at plantyourself.com. And as always, be well, my friends.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.